Hello, welcome back to EPG. I'm, of course, Greg, your host. Continuing with our spooky series, I'm going to talk today about the spookiest, creepiest tour that I took on my trip, and that was, of course, going through the footsteps of Jack the Ripper in London. So for those who are not familiar with Jack the Ripper, that was the name given to a serial killer who went around the neighborhood of Whitechapel in London in 1888. He claimed 5 victims, at least officially, and yeah, the tour started at night, of course, at a metro stop, so that's where we met our guide, and then he took us around to each of the 5 locations where these women, women of ill repute, prostitutes, were murdered. And kind of interesting in the respect that the murders got gruesome the further along they went. It went to basically a dissection. And that goes with other kind of serial killer things, that they get more comfortable with doing the act. They figure out the mistakes that they made in the first murder, and then the second murder they improve, and then moving along, as dreadful as that sounds. But we were taking each one of the murder scenes where the bodies were found. And there are a couple of things that I learned on this tour that, being a guy from history who likes history and never really thought of at the time, but, being explained to me, found fascinating. And one of the parts that I found interesting was that in that time, during the Industrial Revolution in that area, there was a lot of poverty. There was a lot of Irish immigration coming to London. There was a lot of people living in a very dense place, so there was not a lot of opportunity for work. So women, a lot of them would turn to prostitution. They would work in brothels and all that. Due to these dismal prospects, what a lot of these people did, men and women, is that they would drink a lot. And this wasn't like today where all the alcohol that we have is regulated. A lot of the gin that they drank was bathtub gin or stuff without a lot of kind of regulation to it. So different alcohol amounts, different strengths, etc. And because of all their poverty, some of these people did not have a place to sleep. So instead of sleeping out on the street, where they could be hurt by a number of different vagrants or villains out there, some of them would opt to sleep in kind of like hotels. But again, they were very poor. So what some would do is that they would rent a rope, where they would then drink themselves into a stupor and then hang over that rope. And that is how they would pass out over it, and that's how they would sleep. And that is where the term being hungover came from. Another interesting part about this is that in that time, footwear. So the police, whenever they would chase after somebody, you could always hear them coming because it'd be clop, 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 even if you couldn't see them through the thick kind of soot and smoke of the industrial age in London. So what they did was, instead of having their old soles on their shoes, they would put rubber on them to make them more quiet, make them able to sneak. So these things were then called sneakers. Interesting, huh? So the final thing that I learned on this tour, it was a great tour. Tour guide was great, gave him a great big tip because it was just an excellent tour, was that this also was kind of the first genesis of fake news. Because in this age, the Victorian era, there was kind of the newspapers were very popular, and that's how people would get their news. And they really put it to the test when they say, if it bleeds, it leads. So a lot of stories, a lot of salacious stories, a lot of false stories, a lot of stories that nowadays would be covered under libel laws, saying that this person was Jack the Ripper, or this person, or this politician, or that government official was Jack the Ripper. So yeah, kind of like proto-tabloids, but a lot more vicious when it came to finger pointing. So yeah, those were the things that I learned on this tour. Again, as I said, it was a great tour, especially, given the spookiness of going around London at night, where these historical crimes actually took place. And if you find yourself in London and would like a little creepiness, perfectly safe, but just, to give you the willies for a little while, I would highly suggest taking a Jack the Ripper tour when you are there. So, thank you very much for your time, and get out there.